it's hard enough to believe that the Director's Commentary series on this channel has now reached the 2013 Masters of the Universe Classics line. That's crazy. I mean, there's probably more episodes of this series than there were of Filmation. That's even crazier. Like more original He-Man content on Spector Creative than the longest-running He-Man show. Well, that's what happens when you have such a great line with so many characters. And 2013 kicked off with a huge fan favorite. Tough shit. I mean, Too Bad, one of Skeletor's sort of core bad guys from the middle of the vintage line. Didn't ship too early, like Beastman. Didn't ship too late, like, well, I guess Blade. That a lot of people had him. And that included me. I had the vintage toy, and to tell you the truth, this toy actually made me nauseous as a child. The idea of, I don't know, his character blended together, it was kind of like Garbage Pail Kids. I tried to collect them, but every time I looked at one, I would get this nauseous feeling in my stomach, and I just could not get into them. And the same thing happened with my Too Bad action figure. Now, he came across a little bit more goofy on the Filmation series, so I don't know if that helped. I did eventually. I know I used him in a lot of my play adventures. Now, as a toy, he's really interesting because, well, he required different mechanics and a different body type than most of the Masters of the Universe figures, since he had that super wide chest in order to punch himself in the face. Now, he also started off as a much different type of character. Originally, Too Bad was going to be called Schizo and was going to have two different types of personalities, good and evil. But it was thought that high-ups that this actually might be seen as, well, I don't know, you might be poking fun at people with this condition. So the whole good guy, bad guy concept was scaled back, and he was just turned into a bad guy with two bad guy halves, each one more bad guy than the other. Hey, why not? So, despite all of the different back and forth in his creation, he definitely was solidified as one of the core Skeletor evil minions, as I noted earlier, that because he shipped in the sort of heart of the line, like the 85-ish time when well, actually he was an 84 figure. Someone will correct me in the comments. But yeah, that was when MOTUC was selling the best. It was selling millions and millions of units, which meant a lot of kids had Too Bad, and that's one of the reasons he's so popular, is just the fact that he shipped during the most popular time of the vintage brand. And any character that fell into sort of the 84, 85 time, well, physically more people had him. And his origin changed a lot over the years. Originally, he was super smart, hence 2 heads, 2 brains, and he was sort of Skeletor's ace in the hole when it had to come to strategy. But in the 2002 series, the Mike Young production, a completely new origin was created, where 2 different characters that were bounty hunters, Tuvar and Badra, were magically combined into one character. Now, originally, Tuvar and Badra were well, they were competitors of each other. They were, it's like Bosk and Boba Fett, 2 different bounty hunters that were both trying to claim the prize. And Skeletor, in one of his things, well, moments of whatever, decided to combine them into one character. And I always wondered, if he had the ability to do this, why didn't he do it more often? Why didn't he use this magic?
Whenever you notice something like that, a wizard did it.
Alright, so yeah, we never got Beastman and Merman combined into 2 characters, but we did get Too Bad. And as a kid, we had to kind of make up a reason why he had 2 heads and 2 body colors and all of that. Well, 2000X definitely did a good job of fleshing these characters out, and it's also noticeable how different the different Too Bads that have come out as toys over the years have been. A lot of fans speculated that putting him in the classics would mean that he would have a more sort of classicized form, the standard body, with just 2 heads and, 2 different colors of paint. Some people even thought about doing a super deluxe set where you could have Tuvar, Badra, and then combine them into Too Bad and sort of almost get 3 figures in one. While we never thought of anything as ambitious as this, doing Tuvar and Badra as unique characters was absolutely on the table, and I think if the line had continued, we would have gotten to them as either separate figures or a 2-pack. But yeah, a super deluxe 3-pack, that might have been pricey. Now, one of the interesting things about the way Too Bad was done in the Classics line is it did combine elements of sort of different versions of Too Bad over the years, because, as I said, there was some differences. And especially in Classics, one of the odd things was that his paint job just went straight down the middle, as if there was like one single line. When you compare this to the original toy from the 80s, well, the purple sort of splashed over into the blue, if you will, on the body. So you got kind of like this weird kind of like venom, liquid, I don't know what. But yeah, he wasn't just completely blue on one side and completely purple. There was some sort of like overlap, I guess. And honestly, I don't know why we didn't do that in Classics to this day. I don't ever remember having a conversation with the Horsemen. And honestly, by this time in 2013, things were just going so fast and quickly, and there was so much going on. We were dealing with Castle Grayskull, and, well, yeah, coming back and commenting on something like this, it just never came up. I don't know why, but we still got a great figure, even though he stood out on his own, and while he had some 2000X elements, it was definitely leaning much more towards the original toy. If you look at the 2000X figure and compare it to Classics, there's a lot of differences, especially in terms of the footwear and the way the wrist gauntlets work, whether or not his fingers are showing or his fingers are encased in a glove. So, yeah, there's a lot of different directions I think the Horsemen could have gone with this one. Now, looking at what was happening at Mattel when 2000X came out, and as an example, the DC Superheroes line, which was also being put out by the same exact team that was doing the 2000X line, well, they had an edict from management to maximize the tooling investment, which meant every figure that was created got 2 different decos. And usually, for the most part, these 2 decos made sense. You know, you got Darkseid in blue, and you got Darkseid in a darker blue. I mean, there was comic reference for both of these things. Sometimes you got things that were a little bit more outside the box, like what fans call Lava Reflection Doomsday, which is a repaint of the Doomsday tool based on a lighting effect from the Justice League Unlimited cartoon. Yeah, I never really understood how this made it into the 6-inch line, other than brand managers at the time who didn't understand the content. More on that in a different video. Now, Masters of the Universe 2000X got the same edict, where every tool had to get a repaint to maximize the investment. And some of them made sense, like Trapjaw's repaint was an homage to the original mini-comics, where he had green skin and some yellow highlights, and was actually a different character, but that's a whole other story. Cyclone, not so much, more like Doomsday. The repaint was like, huh? Like red and blue? You're just kind of like throwing more primary colors at him? Hey, it was meant for kids, and that's the same reason why Disco Skeletor was created. Go see the video on that. I'll link it at the end. Too Bad got a very interesting repaint in the 2000X line, where essentially they just took the purple and the blue and they swapped them, which I actually thought was a really cool thing, because when you have to do a repaint for, management's sake, to pay for the tooling, hey, for Too Bad it kind of made sense. But the Classics figure was absolutely going to focus on the original vintage figure, albeit maybe without the sort of purple oozing color that crept into the blue, which again, to this day, I don't know why we didn't do that. It feels like it would have made sense to do that with Classics. But this Too Bad did get a ton of tooling. I think he was almost fully tooled, maybe except for the left arm and left leg. Everything else was new. He had a new chest, new arms, new legs, new heads. And the bio was great, because as I said, in 2000X, they gave him a definitive origin. And Classics was always kind of supposed to be a continuation of the 2000X story. So it was really cool to finally put this into one place and have a definitive origin for him, because again, in the vintage line, his origin changed a little bit. So yeah, very popular character, has been interpreted in several toy lines in different ways, but it was great to get him into Classics, even if it was a character that kind of made me nauseous when I was a kid, and I just thought he was punching himself in the face.